I never expected to become the center of Northern California's biggest land development story in decades. But sitting in that law office watching my in-laws snicker as I inherited what they thought was worthless farmland, I realized that sometimes the best gifts come disguised as disappointments. My name is Rachel Thompson, and until last week, I was just the unsuitable wife who married James Harrison's only son. The Harrison family was old money, real estate developers who'd shaped San Francisco's skyline for 3 generations. But according to my mother-in-law Margaret, I was just a small-town girl who'd somehow trapped her precious son. I still remember the first family dinner after Tom and I announced our engagement. Margaret had examined my simple dress with barely concealed disdain. "And what does your family do, dear?" The way she emphasized family made it clear she expected something disappointing. "My father was a geologist," I'd answered truthfully. "He passed away when I was young. Mom raised me on her own, teaching at the local high school." The slight curl of Margaret's lips said it all. In her world, teaching high school was barely a step above manual labor. What I didn't mention was that my father had been one of California's most respected geological surveyors, or that I'd inherited his passion for understanding what lay beneath the Earth's surface. James Harrison, my father-in-law, had been different. Unlike his status-obsessed wife and other children, he'd taken a genuine interest in my background. "A geologist's daughter?" he'd said during one of our rare private conversations. "Fascinating field. Tell me, what do you know about mineral rights?" That conversation happened 6 months ago, one of our last before his unexpected heart attack. Now, sitting in his lawyer's wood-paneled office, I wondered if there had been more to his questions than simple curiosity. "Let's proceed with the reading of the will," Mr. Davidson, the family lawyer, announced. The office was crowded with Harrisons. Margaret perched regally in the center chair, her daughters Catherine and Elizabeth flanking her like perfectly coiffed bookends. Tom sat beside me, gripping my hand supportively. The beginning was predictable. The Harrison building, their flagship downtown property, went to Catherine. The Nob Hill mansion and summer house in Carmel went to Elizabeth. Margaret received a substantial trust fund and their Palm Springs estate. Tom inherited his father's private investment portfolio and a significant stake in Harrison Development Corporation. Then came the surprise. "To my daughter-in-law Rachel," Mr. Davidson read, adjusting his glasses, "I leave my personal property at 1242 Old Mill Road, including all 200 acres of the surrounding farmland and all associated rights and privileges." The room erupted in poorly concealed laughter. Margaret's eyes glittered with malicious amusement. "The old Wilson farm?" Catherine snickered. "Daddy bought that worthless piece of dirt 30 years ago. It's nothing but weeds and an old farmhouse." "How appropriate," Elizabeth added with a smirk. "She can play farmer while we handle the real estate empire." I kept my face carefully neutral, but my mind was racing. James Harrison had been many things, but he'd never been wasteful with money or property. If he'd held on to that land for 30 years, there had to be a reason. "There's a letter for Rachel as well," Mr. Davidson continued, holding up a sealed envelope. "To be opened privately." Margaret's eyes narrowed. Everything else was read aloud. "Why the secrecy?" "Because those were Mr. Harrison's explicit instructions," the lawyer replied firmly. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of legal terminology and thinly veiled insults. As we left, Margaret caught my arm. "Enjoy your dirt farm," she said sweetly. "Such a shame you won't be able to afford the property taxes. When you're ready to sell, Harrison Development will take it off your hands. We wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself trying to manage real estate." I smiled politely. "Thank you for your concern, Margaret. I'm sure I'll figure something out." In the car, Tom finally let out the laugh he'd been holding in. "Did you see their faces? Dad always said they never bothered to learn anything about that property. Too busy chasing glamorous developments to pay attention to an old farm." "You knew about this?" asked surprised. He grinned. "Dad told me last month that he had a special gift for you. Said something about you being the only one who'd understand its true value." He squeezed my hand. "Whatever's in that letter, I'm with you all the way." At home, I waited until Tom was asleep before opening the letter. The paper was thick, expensive, covered in James's distinctive handwriting. "Dear Rachel, if you're reading this, then my rather dramatic family has just finished making fools of themselves over what they think is worthless farmland. Their reaction tells me everything I need to know about whether I made the right choice. 30 years ago, I commissioned a geological survey of that property. The results were interesting. I bought the land immediately but kept the survey results private. Only 3 people ever knew the truth. Myself, the surveyor, your father, and now you. Look in the old barn behind the north wall. Your father helped me hide something there all those years ago. Once you find it, you'll understand why I've kept this land so long, and why you're the perfect person to inherit it. One piece of advice. Before you do anything with what you find, have your own survey done. Times have changed and so have survey technologies. Get everything documented properly. They always underestimated you, Rachel. Just like they underestimated this land. It's time to show them what they missed. Your loving father-in-law, James. I sat there for a long time reading and rereading the letter. James had known my father? Had worked with him? And what had they hidden in that barn 30 years ago? The next morning, I called the most respected geological survey company in Northern California and scheduled an urgent appointment for Monday. Then I drove out to see my inheritance. The old Wilson farm sat in a valley about an hour north of San Francisco. The farmhouse needed work but was solidly built. The fields were overgrown but fertile. But it was the barn that drew my attention. A massive old structure with its north wall facing the hillside. As I walked the property, my father's voice echoed in my memory. He taught me to read the land, to understand what stories the soil and stone could tell. Looking at the surrounding hills with a geologist's eye, I began to understand why James might have been interested in this particular piece of property. My phone buzzed. Margaret. Rachel, dear, I've had our lawyers draw up a reasonable offer for the farm. No need to waste time playing with property you can't possibly understand. I looked at the hills again, a smile spreading across my face. Actually, Margaret, I think I'll wait until after Monday's survey. But thank you for your concern. Don't be difficult, she snapped. You're embarrassing yourself. We'll see, I replied calmly. Have a lovely weekend. I hung up and walked to the barn. The north wall looked solid, but I'd grown up learning my father's tricks. It took me less than an hour to find the hidden panel. Inside was a steel box, sealed and weatherproof. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was another letter, this one in my father's handwriting, along with maps, surveys, and geological reports. As I read, my eyes widened. James Harrison hadn't just bought a farm 30 years ago. He'd bought something that could change everything. But first, I needed Monday's survey to confirm what my father had found all those years ago. Until then, I had a quiet weekend ahead of me, plenty of time to review these documents, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best revenge is letting people underestimate you right up until the moment they realize their mistake. Looking up at the hills that held our secret, I whispered, "Thanks, Dad. You and James really knew how to plan ahead." Monday's survey would change everything. But for now, I had some reading to do. Monday morning dawned clear and crisp. I arrived at the farm just as the geological survey team was setting up their equipment. Dr. Sarah Chin, the lead geologist, greeted me with professional curiosity. "Mrs. Thompson, you requested our most comprehensive survey package. Any particular areas you'd like us to focus on?" I handed her my father's old maps. "The Northern Ridge and these 3 sections here. And please call me Rachel." As the team worked, I noticed an expensive black SUV pulling up. Margaret, Catherine, and Elizabeth stepped out, dressed as if for a society lunch rather than a farm visit. Perfect timing. "Rachel, darling," Margaret called out, picking her way across the field in her designer heels. "We thought we'd stop by to see what you're wasting money on. Geological surveys aren't cheap, you know." I smiled. "Don't worry about the expense, Margaret. It'll be worth every penny." Dr. Chin approached us, tablet in hand, her expression professional but excited. "Mrs. Thompson, you're going to want to see this. Our preliminary results confirm what these old surveys suggested, but with modern equipment, we're seeing even more than they did 30 years ago." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Old surveys." I gestured to the hills. "This land sits on one of the largest lithium deposits in North America. The geological formation is unique. The ore is unusually pure and relatively easy to access. My father discovered it when he surveyed the land for James 30 years ago." The color drained from Margaret's face. Catherine grabbed her phone, presumably to Google lithium prices. "That's not all," Dr. Chin continued, pulling up more data. "The groundwater aquifer system here is exceptional. With California's water rights laws, This property controls water access for about 30 square miles of prime development land. Elizabeth swayed slightly. Development land? Yes, I said quietly. Including all those parcels Harrison Development has been trying to buy for their new tech campus project. The ones that kept falling through because they couldn't secure water rights. The implications hit them all at once. James hadn't just left me a farm. He'd left me control over billions of dollars worth of lithium, crucial for electric vehicle batteries and green energy storage. Plus the water rights that his own company desperately needed for future developments. This can't be legal, Margaret sputtered. James couldn't have meant. Actually, Tom's voice came from behind us. He'd arrived just in time. Dad meant exactly this. Rachel, show them the rest. I pulled out the documents from the barn's hidden safe. James and my father did the original survey together. They knew what was here but decided to wait. 30 years ago, lithium wasn't nearly as valuable, and the mining technology wasn't as advanced. They played the long game. Catherine's face had turned an interesting shade of red. That's why Dad wouldn't let us sell this property. All those offers we got over the years. Other mining companies figured it out eventually, I confirmed. But James kept refusing their offers. He was waiting for the right moment, and the right person to take over. Dr. Chen's team continued their survey, adding more data to support what we already knew. By lunch, the preliminary report confirmed deposits worth billions at current market prices, with relatively low extraction costs due to the unique geological formation. Margaret tried one last attack. You can't possibly manage something like this. You need experienced developers, connections. You mean like the connections I made during my 3 years working in sustainable resource management? I asked innocently. Or my contacts in the green energy sector. The ones you never bothered to ask about because you were too busy looking down on my humble background. Tom grinned. Dad always said the future was in green technology. He just needed someone who understood both the science and the business side to manage it properly. Over the next few hours, my in-laws watched their assumptions crumble as more survey data came in. The lithium deposits were even larger than originally estimated. The water rights were legally ironclad. And I had all the documentation proving James had planned this deliberately. By evening, reality had set in. Margaret made one final attempt to salvage their position. We should discuss this as a family, she said, forcing a smile. Perhaps a joint venture. Actually, I replied, I already have meetings scheduled with several green technology companies next week. They're very interested in sustainable lithium mining partnerships. And as for the water rights, I paused, enjoying the moment. Harrison Development is welcome to negotiate access. At market rates, of course. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. I partnered with a leading sustainable mining company to develop the lithium deposits, ensuring minimal environmental impact. The old farmhouse was renovated into a research center studying green mining practices. Harrison Development had to pay premium rates for water access, significantly cutting into their profits on the tech campus project. Margaret was forced to step down from the board after shareholders learned she'd dismissed multiple reports about the property's potential over the years. 1 year later, I stood on the northern ridge watching electric excavators quietly working in the valley. The operation was a model of sustainable mining, solar-powered equipment, groundwater protection systems, and a restoration plan for each completed section. Tom joined me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Dad would love this, he said. Green technology, sustainable practices, and the perfect person in charge. I found more letters in the safe, I told him. Correspondence between our fathers spanning years. They had this all planned out. The timing, the technology advances, even who would inherit it. They just needed someone who'd understand the land's true value. The property's worth had skyrocketed beyond even James's expectations. The lithium operation alone was valued at over $3 billion, with the water rights adding another fortune in long-term value. But more importantly, we were helping drive the transition to green energy while demonstrating that mining could be done responsibly. Margaret and my sisters-in-law still attend the same society functions, but their influence has waned. It's hard to look down on someone who's revolutionizing the green energy supply chain. These days they avoid me at events, which suits me fine. I kept the old barn, converting part of it into a memorial museum honoring James and my father's vision. Their letters and surveys are displayed alongside modern geological data, showing how they'd pieced together the puzzle decades ago. The farm's fields still grow crops. I leased most of the agricultural land to local organic farmers. James would have appreciated that we're producing both food and sustainable energy from the same property. Sometimes late at night, reading through my father's old surveys, I think about that day in the lawyer's office. They thought James was punishing me with worthless land. Instead, he was entrusting me with his greatest legacy, one that only a geologist's daughter would truly understand. The worthless farm is now a case study in sustainable resource development, featured in environmental journals and business schools. Margaret still can't quite look me in the eye when our paths cross at charity events. I had the original survey framed, the one my father and James did together 30 years ago. It hangs in my office alongside a current aerial photo of the property. The old and the new side by side, showing how vision and patience can transform worthless land into something revolutionary. As for me, I'm expanding our sustainable mining practices to other sites, teaching a new generation of geologists about responsible resource development. Success isn't just about finding valuable deposits, it's about developing them in a way that respects both the land and future generations. The property's main gate still has the old Wilson Farms sign, but now it shares space with a plaque commemorating James Harrison and Michael Chen's vision for sustainable resource development. Two men who saw beyond the surface and planned for a future they wouldn't live to see. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving your supporters right. James and my father believed in me before anyone else did. The real victory isn't in the billions of dollars or the crushed egos of my in-laws. It's in showing that their faith was well placed. Looking out over the valley now, watching sustainable mining and organic farming coexist, I often think about Margaret's words, "Enjoy your dirt and weeds." I did enjoy them, just not in the way she expected. Because sometimes the most valuable things in life look worthless to those who don't know how to see beneath the surface. And that's worth more than all the society connections in the world.